hitting notify. I think the best way you can approach that is signing up for the robocall city. The King County Flood Warning Center also has an alert you can sign up for, so that at that phase 1, that 5,000 CFS level, you can have an alert come to your computer, to your phone, your office phone. It'll automatically send that information out to you. So that is, if you have a phone for text message or smartphone, you can sign up for that King County alert, and that will happen automatically based off of that phase system. And that really is a very good way to be alerted right when we get those readings. You would get the reading the same time I would. So I would recommend that you sign up for those.
No. Nothing.
Well, part of setting the levees back is that we'll also be taking out the existing levees and making more room for the river to move around in areas where there isn't any development. So these setback levees will afford you significant flood protection and actually help make your community more developable. As I mentioned, 2 projects that are in motion. The countywide project is scheduled for construction in 2 years, and we're targeting the Right Bank project to be constructed in about 5 years. So that's the time frame for those 2 projects to be in place. Anytime you work near water, there's going to be a permit required. But, you know, it's the way that we're designing these levee setback projects is true. You set the levee back, and then when the sediment has a place to settle, it's going to do it at a slower rate than if you have it just in the channel. It's building up very quickly. So, you know, in the future, 20 years from now or 50 years from now, I don't know what the regulations are going to be. Is there the potential that gravel removal could occur sort of in the dry when those levees are set back? Possibly. It might make it easier to do. There might be less. There was always going to be environmental mitigation for that, but it's not. It could be taken into account as another solution.
Yes, sir.
So, last time the dam was 65 years old. Is there any way to increase the capacity of that dam, or to have other dams to control the other rivers? I mean, that would make no sense to me if we got old dam that needs to replace.
You know, I don't know a little bit of the history about why they selected Mud Mountain Dam out of all 3 basins. It was probably the best geologic location to have a large dam. There was a canyon there, and so it was selected in that way. I haven't heard anything about trying to find other sites for other dams. I just haven't heard anything like that.
My father was actually a Corps of Engineers. He retired a number of years ago. And he tells me, you know, this is an area I remember all the time, they have to continually check those dams. And there's always problems, always leaks. So my question is it feasible that the Mud Mountain Dam is being closed and may need to be replaced? I mean, if it's dry now, it needs to
full staff up at Mud Mountain who are continually checking things. And, you know, if there's something that needs to be repaired, it's repaired, but I mean, there's nothing, you know, there's no critical issues with Mud Mountain Dam as a structure. So I hope that answers the question to that.
Yes, ma'am. On White River Drive, that is where they will be putting the new setback levee. And that allows more capacity for the river by building it back as far from the river as possible. I mean, and then breach any levees that are between there and the river, they would take out some of those obstructions to allow more capacity for the river in the future.
In the meantime, while they're doing that work there, is there any way possible they can make that property where you can walk on that sidewalk safely and not just go off the side there and break an ankle? You walk back to the center of that section where that mower is on, and that part by the sidewalk is just grass. It's nothing but hole, it's nothing level. You go around in a circle, yeah, it's okay there. You go that whole straight section where the level homes are. You keep your box on the sidewalk. What can be done with the other
Yeah, you know, we had a contractor to do that work, and we had rough grading for the surface there. It wasn't intended to be smooth grass lawn. It came out of
Well,
the...
as soon as we can get the berm, that's why I've been waiting for these 5 years for them to happen. But now they're moving everything, and they're making more trenches and grass, and the sidewalk next to it. We don't want gravel, we want some soil with grass that people can walk by and not hurt themselves.
Yeah, we had to put down some extra rock material because the soil was so soft, and we didn't get equipment in there to reposition the HESCO. And so we need to have that stay in place for our access to those. Yeah, we need to have it. The soil is too soft.
Go ahead and do that, go ahead and put some dirt by the sidewalk.
We have a punch list yet. We need, before we, you know, finish up our work out here, we'll take another look at that.
Who's next?
Any more questions? Yes, ma'am.
We don't have an emergency fund for buying houses, but as I mentioned, the two levee setback projects are in a 6-year CIP. They are slated for about $15 million each, and that includes some assumptions for land acquisition. And we work with willing sellers as we try to proceed with these projects.
You know, probably you try to build areas
Yes, sir.
I have 2 questions. One, obviously flooding on the White River, to the White River, it's pretty much an expression of garbage. Because you are controlling how much water is out of the dam. The first question is, under what conditions would you do a phase 3 or phase 4 flooding? And the second question is, given what happened in 2009, I didn't start out with that, but have you changed any of your water release procedures more aggressive, getting the water out of the dam faster or back down?
We regulate the dam to what comes in. We don't have complete control over the river. We do what our dam can do. We stick to our standard operating procedures for the dam.
I think it's a tough question to answer because a lot of it requires speculation, which is something we can't do. I mean, we can't possibly predict every scenario, but I can tell you that the Corps of Engineers is committed to looking at the data, doing everything we can to understand what's happening, and to just work with, in partnership, King County and the City of Pacific. It's one of the reasons why, you know, lessons learned from 2009 we saw that the gauges weren't necessarily giving us the data or the information that we needed. And so we employed the levee spotter program so that we could get real-time data and relay back to the folks that were releasing the water so that we could better analyze what was happening here. There's no scenario that we can predict and say that, yes, this is going to happen, or, you know, no, we'll never do that. We don't know. But like I said, we're doing everything we can. And as a newcomer to the Corps of Engineers, I'm amazed at the folks and their commitment to partnering with everybody to come up with the best possible solutions to help do what it is, the situation that we have. So.
I think one of my points is, under what conditions standard operating procedures would you go to the exterior? That's one of my questions.
So I'm going to try to pitch it here, because I know Mike's in the emergency management part, and he's sort of on the ground, and we don't have the core dam operators here for water management, but I work with them a lot over the years. And, you know, they're balancing all this information, as we all are, with what the weather system is, predicted in terms of the amount of precipitation, where it's falling, how fast the inflows are coming to the reservoir. And from just my experience, I'm working on this river for about 20 years now, with these same folks at the Corps. They're the same people, so they have a lot of knowledge about how the river floods. They start looking at flow control or holding water in that pool when they get to about 5,000 cubic feet per second. And it is their judgment. They have, you know, calculations, they call them rating curves. They know how much water can come out of the gates of the dam, the capacity of those, and they're trying to do that balancing act of what is the weather system bringing in? Is it bringing in 30,000 cubic feet per second into that reservoir? And they're going to try to release up to 12,000 when feasible, and they will bring it up. And I think it's very important that the river spotters now are coordinating this, because they will be able to have the eyes in the field. They'll be talking to their water management folks, and they'll say, okay, what does 7,000 cubic feet per second look like in Pacific? Are we still within the riverbanks? Is it starting to come out? Okay, we need to let more water out of the dam. Can we increase that by 500, by 1,000? They'll do it in increments, and they'll be talking back and forth between the river spotters in the field and the people that are doing those calculations and watching that inflow to the reservoir.
Does that happen in the middle of the night?
No, and that's why, and again, in the middle of the night at 2 a.m., and I was awake with you all, it was flooding down here. And it was early that next morning, I think 9 o'clock, 6 o'clock at night, and 9 o'clock the next morning, the colonel was in the helicopter, and he saw what was happening, and they brought the flows back down that next day.
Problem is, we were told by our state that it's only the dam is only going to be up in that far for a couple hours, and it's 24 hours.
Yeah, when there's a lot of water in that reservoir, it takes a lot of time to empty it out, and that's where this back-to-back storm concern comes into play. If they feel they have to let water out, and I'm speaking here for the Corps, so please keep that in mind, that, you know, they have to make those judgments, and that's what they do. They do the best they can.
agree with what you're just saying. We're just concerned because, you know, with our livelihood, our homes are being, could possibly destroyed. So I do appreciate everything you guys are doing. Just, you know, I want to make clear that we are worried, so we're maybe saying things that, you know, we wouldn't necessarily say. But we do appreciate it in the water.
We understand your frustration. The people who operate the dam, they don't want to flood. That's the last thing they want to do. Unfortunately, they have to weigh these two issues. Do I allow some flooding in this one community that's going to impact 150 young houses? Or do I try and hold back more and then lose all control and then impact thousands of houses? That's the tough decision they have to make. And we, unfortunately, because we're further upstream, there's impediments downstream that keep some of that water up here. We get hit. I shouldn't say we get hit, because I don't live in the Pacific. I work here, but I live in Sumner, and I've had times when I've had to evacuate my house because I live fairly close to the Gulf River, and they've come and told me at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, you're not going to have ingress to your house because the street down here is going to be flooded. It's going to be a foot or 2 deep. You're stuck. You either have to get out now or you're going to be staying in your house until the river goes down. So I do understand some of the inconveniences and the problems that occur. Are there any more questions? Yes, ma'am.
When the river gets up and starts flowing, or yesterday, how much pressure can also go back as far as, you know, it'll go pretty fast, you know, the river will be going, if it gets high enough and coming.
So, when we first installed those in January, or after January 2009, in the fall, we actually had the HESCO representative come out and give us information about it, and we had technical guidance from the Corps. And the HESCO barriers are 4 feet high, and they can have water come right up to the top of them. And they, you know, if they're installed properly, you know, they'll hold that. So they're very stout.
No matter how fast the river is flowing at that point.
Well, you know, erosion is another type of flood hazard, and it's good that you acknowledge that. And that is something that can move and undermine riverbanks, and certainly if that condition did arrive with undermining the HESCOs, you know, they could fail. That is one way they could fail. And that's why during the flood event, again, with the river spotters, King County will be out in the field, the City of Pacific, we have places we want to keep checking during the flood event, and those are the types of things that we're going to be watching. How much water is up against the face of the HESCO, or the HESCO is starting to tilt, you know, what's happening in the ground behind the HESCOs, or the fractures in the soil. There's all sorts of different clues you can look for to know if something's happening during that flood event and damaging the protection measures.
And I would add, that's the reason they're set back in the park instead of right along the river. So there are high river velocity.
So we've done that volume long across.
Yeah, plus that area is available for flood storage. That's why the park's closed off and set back.
Yes, sir.
I got a question for you. If we know the 8th Street or 3rd Street Bridge is a choke point for the river, and they're putting a new bridge across it, is it going to allow more flow underneath the bridge? So
That is be in consideration as they're designing that bridge to remove. No, they just, that's the City of Sumner project. They just hired an engineer to begin the process. I think they just received grant money for the design element of that project earlier this year, so they're just at the design phase. Of course, the thing is, if they widen that part of the channel, then it creates flood problems downstream, so that it's a trade-off and balance throughout the whole river channel of how do we keep the impact to property owners at the lowest level?